So now, after this intervention of Juliette, I will go to a section dedicated on budget and European financing. I hope it's not too technical, so feel free if it's something that you don't understand or if you have a question to interrupt me. So the European budget. So first of all, it's important to know that the European budget is elaborated for every 7 years. So we call that the European programming period. So at the moment we are in the budget period 2021-2027. So the previous period was 2014-2020. So every 7 years Europe adopts a multi-annual financial framework. So EU adopted in December 2021. So the multi-annual budget of 1,211 trillion. So this is 173 billion per year because it's for 7 years. And because 2021 was a specific period due to the COVID pandemic, Europe also adopted a recovery plan of 806 billion called Next Generation EU, and that gives us a total budget of 2018 trillion for the 7 next year. So this plan should support the economies of the countries most affected by COVID. So 385 billion is in loans. This is a great novelty actually in the European budget, and 338 billion is in grants. So the loans will have to be repaid by the member states, but the grants will be financed by the development of new EU-owned resources, like a plastic tax, border carbon tax, and also a tax on GAFA, so the big Google, Amazon, Facebook companies. And the Next Generation EU Recovery Instrument will transfer these funds to different EU programs, different financing programs that we will detail a little bit later in this session. So this is for the recovery plan, and regarding the regular budget, so it's the amount of 1,211 trillion. It's dedicated to implement the EU long-term policy guidelines, in particular the Green Deal. Maybe you already heard about that, but the Green Deal is an overarching strategy that the objective is to make Europe the first climate neutral continent by 2050, with already 55% less carbon emissions in 2023. So this is a very big ambition of the European Union, and it's translated by the Green Deal with different laws on environment, on emissions, on new ways for energy and that kind of things. So that's all integrated in the European Green Deal, and is an important budget for these topics. So yeah, where does the money come from? That's maybe a question that you asked. So mainly the budget from the European Union comes from the member states for 70%, and there are also some others. So there are some taxes on VIT, some custom duty, but yeah, the most important part is about is coming from the European member states. So that's for a first slide on the budget. I go further.
I'm sorry, I have a lot of questions.
Yeah. You have a lot of questions? Go ahead.
I'm not sure, but I have 10 years experience be like a prof in university. Yeah. So I'm sure that students that come today are the cleverest one, but still, is everyone students got that European community have new incomes? Що Європейська Рада Європи отримає, ви бачите, які цікаві види податків. Європейський пластиковий податок. Ви собі уявляєте? European plastic tax. Have you ever heard about that? Or, for example, GAFA tax on digital giants. As far as I understood, it's taxes that will be paid, for example, like company like Apple or like Google or something like that. Yes, it's like that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's not at the moment. It's not completely operational, but there's a global agreement to have these taxes actually on plastic, and indeed the big digital companies. And the objective is also to have a carbon tax on the borders. So because Europe wants to be climate neutral in 2050, so there are a lot of frameworks to lower carbon in industrial productions, but in some other continents, the rules are not as strong as here. So if companies want to produce in continents with less severe rules, then they will have to pay a tax when they bring in their products into Europe. Actually, that's a little bit the principle of the carbon tax. And there is also will be a tax on plastic, because the objective is to stop completely or to reduce drastically plastic use. And on these topics, the idea is to have new incomes for the European Union actually, and that this will help them to pay a little part of the next generation EU recovery plan.
I will translate a little bit, because
it was too complex.
I'm sure that this information are like wow for our students. Шановні студенти, дивіться, бачите, як цікаво пов'язано environmental питання навколишнього середовища з питаннями, наприклад, сплати податків. Border Carbon Tax, тобто європейська ком'юніті хоче до 2050 року стати carbon-free територією. Для цього підприємців спонукають до того, щоб зменшувати викиди, і звичайних споживачів спонукають до того, щоб менше використовувати пластик. Відповідним чином, уявляєте, спочатку виникає така ідея, щоб зробити там не те, що там світ без пластику взагалі, але використовувати певні reusable матеріали, використовувати, не знаю, навіть з огляду на те, яка кількість одягу є у кожного з нас, можна говорити про те, що в Україні, якщо ти говориш, що ти купуєш одяг на секонд-хенді, то в тебе, мабуть, є проблеми з грошима. В Європі, наприклад, у Франції, це взагалі дуже класне і дуже поширене явище, насправді використовується зовсім з іншою метою. Головна мета – я хочу надати свої речі для другого життя. Таким чином, я не буду купляти нові речі, на які використовується, наприклад, той самий карбон або пластик для виробництва. І я являю собою такого раціонального споживача. І от насправді те, що стосується податку на велетнів з цифрової сфери, це теж дуже круто, тому що насправді, мені здається, на сьогоднішній день ці питання не на часі в Україні, але все одно на майбутнє, для того, щоб після перемоги України розбудовувати Україну, для того, щоб дійсно розуміти, на які цінності орієнтуватись, насправді це дуже потужно. Тобто, в принципі, система, як ви знаєте, наприклад, чим більше людина отримує ту саму заробітну плату в Європі, тим більше вона сплачує податок. Тобто, розмір ваших податків, він змінюється з огляду на те, які ви маєте доходи. Так само це питання до цифрових гігантів, які насправді існують. Тому я просто хотіла звернути вашу увагу на ці 3 податки. Мене особисто вони вражають, і мені здається, що це дуже цікаво. Thank you, Wim, for such a speech.
Thanks to you. I think you're completely right that this was important to translate and to precise. It's rather complex material, so thanks a lot. I hope it was clear for everyone.
I just want to put it a little bit clearer.
In the context, yeah, I see. Yeah. Okay. So thanks. I move to the second slide. So here on this slide, the idea is that we have a closer look on how this budget is spent. Apologize that this slide is in French, but I will explain in English. I hope it will be clear. So the spending of the European budget is organized in 3 almost equal parts. Is the 3 circles that you can see on the screen. So we have the cohesion policy. This is the yellow part. So the EU cohesion policy contributes contributes to strengthening economic, social, and territorial cohesion in the European Union. It aims to correct imbalances between countries and regions. So the idea is, if there are poorer regions and richer regions, that we have a kind of more global balance between Europe, between the European countries and regions. So, and inside the cohesion policy, we have several funds, which I will explain a little bit later. So that's for the first part of the budget. Then we have the common agriculture policy. That is the green circle. So in the common agriculture policy, it's organized around major mechanisms. So it's now separated into two pillars. The first pillar concerns support for agriculture markets and incomes, of which the system of aid to farmer constitutes the major part. So the European Union give financing to farmers for regarding to several topics that they set out, but it's direct aid that they give to farmers in the European Union in the common agriculture policy. And then there's a second part that's on the rural development, actually, to help rural areas in their development. There's also some specific funding for that in the common agricultural policy. So this is the second part. So it's almost also 33% of the European budget. And then we have a third part. It's the lower circle in gray. So this is the budget for new developments. So this is funding for different European programs that we also will explain a little bit later. So there are a lot of European programs. So one of them that you maybe know is Erasmus Plus, that you can see with the red circle. So it's well known for students and teachers exchanges between European universities, colleagues, and educational institutions around the world. But we can also use it for more general aspects to foster education, youth, politics, sports, culture. So this is just an example of one European program, but there is also, for instance, that you see in the circle, Horizon Europe. This is a big research program for industrial and other issues. You have then, for instance, a LIFE program that is to foster environment projects. So you have a lot of specific European programs to fund and to support several European projects, actually. So but it's just important to know that you have kind of three major parts in the budget. So one is for the common agriculture policy. A second is for the cohesion policy. So to try to have a well-balanced development in all the European regions and countries. And then there's a third part to support sectors and to support new priorities. And to give funding to several kind of projects that you can develop on European scale, actually. Is this clear for everyone? Okay. So then I will go further. So the objective is now that we have a closer look to some main European funds, like I said. So there are a lot of them, some of which are worth tens of billions of euros, and others are worth a few million euros. So it's very different. So in some of them there are a lot of money, and others there's not so much money. When we want to organize the European funding in categories, you can actually distinguish two types of European funding. So you have funding intended to promote territories, called the regional policy funding or the cohesion policy, like I showed before on the yellow circle. This is generally funding from which local authorities can benefit, like our organization. We are the metropolitan area in the north of France, so we can benefit of that kind of funding. So regional policy policy or cohesion policy aims to reduce the development gap between the regions of the European Union by transferring resources from the richest to the poorest regions. That's actually the principle. So this is organized through different structural funds, which you see on the left part of the slide. So and the other type of funding is intended to promote sectors, and that you can see on the right part of the slide. Actually, for instance, to development environment sectors, or it could different economic sectors, or to promote culture or sports. For that, you have specific dedicated funds. So to promote sectors. So what's important is that we distinguish a part that is dedicated to promote territories, and a part that is dedicated to promote sectors. Actually, that's important to bear in mind. So if we have a look to the structural funds, on the left part, we have the most important is the European Regional Development Fund, the ERDF. So the ERDF aims to strengthen economic and social cohesion in the European Union by correcting imbalances between its regions. So the principle is that the money from the most richest regions can go to the more poorest regions, so that we can have a kind of equal, balanced development in the European Union. Another important structural fund is the European Social Fund, so ESF. So this fund supports employment-related projects throughout Europe and invests in Europe human capital. Actually, it's workers, it's young people, and all those people who are looking for a job. So this is the European Social Fund. Then we also have the Cohesion Fund. So this fund is transport and environment projects. This fund supports transport and environment projects in countries where the gross national income per inhabitant is less than 90% of the EU average. For instance, in 2014 and 2020, these are Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, the Czech Republic, Estonia, Greece, Hungary, Lithuania, Malta, Poland, Portugal, Romania, Slovakia, and Slovenia. So there is a specific fund for the countries where the incomes are lower. So there's a specific cohesion fund to support these countries. That the gap with the richest country becomes smaller, actually, and to give the chance to these countries to have the same developed level of all the European countries. And then there's also the Just Transition Funds. That's a rather new fund. This is the tool to support the territories most affected by the transition towards climate neutrality. For instance, old industrial regions. So the specific fund to support old industrial regions, and that they can also have a more important development, actually. Then we also have the rural development policy, like I showed. It was on the previous slide. It was in the green circle, the smallest of the two green circles. So this is the second pillar, actually, of the common agricultural policy, and it's to support, actually, rural areas for the development, because often rural areas are less developed than more urban areas. So the idea is that they can also benefit from some funding, to have a higher development level, actually, for rural areas. And what's important to know is that these funds are actually managed by national and regional authorities. So it's European money, but that is transferred to the states and the region, and they can manage the organization and the use of the budget in their country or in their region. So we will go a little bit more in detail in a few slides further, but it's important to have in mind that a part of the budget, it's European budget, but it's managed on state or on regional level, actually. And then on the right part, as I said, this is specific programs to fund some sectors. It can be culture, it can be economic development, it can be environment, and these funds are directly managed by the European Commission, and sometimes they create specific agencies authorities actually to manage these funding and these European programs. So yeah, it was kind of a long explanation and a rather technical explanation, I think. But what's important is there is funding for territories, and there is funding for to promote sectors. Actually, that's a little bit the case. Is it okay, Hannah, or do you need
yes.
some more explanation or questions?
Yeah, I just want to clarify.
Yeah.
As far as I understood, you told that some of these foundations are sponsored by USA.
No, I know I wasn't talking about USA. Maybe I was.
I think it was member states, but maybe this.
Which state? Sorry, I couldn't get.
No, I was explaining that the funding to promote the territories, it's managed by the member states of the European Union, actually.
Member states. Okay.
Yeah, maybe I was not clear in my pronunciation, but I wasn't talking about the United States of America. I was talking about the member states of the European Union, actually.
What?
No, the USA is not implicated in the management of the European budget, as far as I know. No, it's just but we will see it in the next slide. Actually, there is kind of agreement that is concluded between every member state and the European Union about the use of the funding to promote territories, actually, and then every state, and often it's on the regional level, they can then manage actually the European budget that is dedicated to their territory. Actually, that's the principle. Okay. Then I go further. So on the following slides, the idea is that we have just a closer look on this cohesion policy and the way it's managed. So between 2021 and 2027, the European Union will spend 331 billion on its cohesion policy. So as we saw before, it's about 33% of the European budget. So these resources are allocated to projects to contribute to the five priorities of regional policy of growth. So at the beginning of each financing period of 7 years, the European Union set out a kind of global strategy, actually. And the objective is that every financing of projects answers to this strategy, actually. And for this period, 2021-2027, the European Commission set out 5 specific priorities which they want to attend with the funding of European project, actually. And these 5 main objectives now are to create a smarter Europe, to create a greener Europe. So that's in relation also with what I was said about the European Green Deal, with the objective to become climate neutral in 2050. Then there is also the aim to become a more connected Europe with strategic transport and digital communication networks. There's also the aim to become a more social Europe, which will give concrete expression to the European set of social rights and supports, about jobs, education, skills, social inclusion, equal access to healthcare. So these are a little bit the topics on the social Europe part. And there's also an important ambition to become a Europe closer to its citizens by supporting locally driven development strategies and sustainable urban development across the EU. So that's also something important, because often Europe can be seen as something that's far away, for instance, for people who live in rural areas. And the idea is also to bring Europe closer to its citizens. So that's important. So just to bear in mind mind that there are 5 specific policy objectives in the 2021-2027 strategy, and the funding is organized around these priorities. And the funding that Europe gives to support territories and to support projects must answer and translate to the realization of these 5 objectives. Actually, that's a little bit the principle. Okay. If that's good for you, then I'll go further on the next slide. How does this work? So as I showed, there is a strategy that is chosen and that is set out for a period of 7 years. And then budgets are allocated to the strategy via the funding programs. So first of all, the EU decides a common strategy. That's what I showed just before. And then there's a partnership agreement that is negotiated between the European Union and each member state. And this defines actually the national strategies for the structural funds. So for instance, for France, European Union said that's our global framework. Then they negotiate an agreement with France and they ask what will be your strategy on the national level that corresponds, that answers to our global European strategy. And then on a lower level, on the regional level, there's also a kind of operational program that is decided on the strategy for implementing the funds, actually. And the management methods are also decided. And then there's an agreement that is concluded between the, in our case, it's on the regional level. It can also be on the national level. There's an agreement that is concluded between national, regional level and the European Union, actually. And then the funding for a specific territory is decided and can then be used in the territory. So I will show in the next slide, for instance, for our region, we are located in the north of France. So there's a specific strategy, a specific program with 1.3 billion euros that is dedicated to development of our regions, actually, with different funds. And in our case, the region is responsible to manage these fundings, actually. And this it's a kind of a long period for when the European strategy is set out. Then we elaborate a strategy in the region, and it's the region that manages it with the different local authorities. So they organize meetings with them, consultation, in order to set out a global regional strategy to use the European funding that is dedicated to our region. That's what we wanted to show just in this slide. I will go further. I will try to go a little bit more in detail about the European Regional Development Funds and the cohesion policy, what we explained. And the idea is actually in our region, it's funding for growth and employment and for territorial cooperation. You see the different type of projects that we finance. It's research and innovation, competitiveness of SMEs, development of information and communication technologies, and ecological transitions. That's a little bit the way that in our region we try to translate the 5 main objectives of Europe that we showed, the way that we implement it in our region, and that we translate it in our regional strategy. So this is one part, so to funding for growth and employment. And there's another part of funding, it's for territorial cooperation. So I will show you on a map. Europe also gives funding to cooperate with other regions and other countries. So it can be on a cross-border scale, it can be on a transnational scale, and it can be also on an interregional scale. But I will show this on the map, it will be more clear in the next slides. I also wanted to give you some examples of projects in our region that has received funding, European funding actually. So it's just some examples. So for instance, we received funding for mobility projects for some bus lines. We also received funding to create mobility hubs, to create a new public space. We also received funding to set out a digital strategy to bring citizens closer to our institutions through digital uses. We also received funding for the protection of architectural heritage. So yeah, this is just an example of projects that we could for which we received actually European funding. Then, as I said, there's also funding for territorial cooperation. So you can do that on three scales actually. So on the left map you see our region and the cross-border region with Belgium. So you see the Belgian-French border, and when you're located in this territory, then you can have specific funding to realize cross-border projects with Belgium, for instance. This can be projects on public transport. This can be projects on public services. For instance, healthcare on a cross-border scale, but this can also be funding for cultural projects, for sports projects, for tourism projects. So what's important to know is that Europe is giving funding to work on a cross-border scale with closing neighboring regions actually. So this is what we call the Interreg funding, the cross-border cooperation funding. So you can do that on just with your neighbors, but you can also do that on a more larger scale. So then that's what we call transnational cooperation. So for instance, for the north of France, we are in this blue area, but there are other areas. For instance, there must be also an area around Spain, Portugal, the south of France, or on other European areas. So the idea is, Europe is divided in more larger regions in which you can cooperate with other countries and regions. That's the Interreg B program. And then you have what we call Interreg C program. So it's interregional cooperation on the whole European level. So for instance, a Spanish city can cooperate with a Polish city or with a Romanian city. So yeah, this is the kind of cooperation over whole Europe actually. And the idea is actually that we can share knowledge and innovation between different European countries and regions. Actually, that's a little bit the idea of this funding. That when there are innovative solutions that are developed, for instance, in one area, that the other European cities and regions also can benefit from this innovation, and there's specific European funding for this part. So this was on the interregional cooperation. Feel free if there are questions, or Hannah, is it clear for you? If you want something to clarify, maybe, or is it okay?
Yes, I have a question.
Yeah.
What about innovation? And in this case, the principle of territory is not Аня, не сохраняется. Is not right for this.
Is not saving.
Yeah, is not saving for this, because we have intellectual property law, and intellectual law is right for each country. And when we use Spanish and Polish city, we combined Spanish and Poland. Yes.
Yeah, and it's on a voluntary basis actually. If some innovative projects or solutions are developed, and this, for instance, a city wants to share it with other cities, then it can use this funding to create partnerships and to innovate together. Actually, that's a little bit the idea.
It's a very good idea. It's the next step of development for developed intellectual property in the world.
Yeah, of course, everyone can keep his intellectual property, but the aim is that Europe give funding to promote, for instance, innovation on a larger scale. Actually, but the companies or the local authorities who developed this innovation, if they want to keep it for them, that's their choice actually. But Europe want to encourage the aim actually to try to make that a larger number of cities or companies can benefit actually from this innovation. But everyone is free to do it or not actually. If they want to keep it more like secret, or that's their choice actually. But the idea of Europe is to share actually innovation and to share innovative solutions between local authorities or between companies, and there is specific funding for that if they want to do that. Or there's also specific funding to conduct together European innovation programs actually, and that's, for instance, what we will see a little bit later. There's a specific program called Horizon Europe, and the aim of this program is that companies and stakeholders of at least 3 countries work together on innovation projects actually, and there is specific funding for that, and the results of these innovation programs will then be shared on a European scale actually. So the aim of the European Union is yet to share knowledge, to share innovation. That innovation that is developed in one country can also be transferred to other countries actually. That's a little bit what the aim of the European funding actually, but it's on a voluntary basis actually. So there's no it's the choice of the companies of the local authorities if they want to share or if they want to innovate together with other regions actually. So that's their own choice, but there is funding to promote it.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you're welcome. Are there other questions maybe? Okay, if not, then I will go further. So these are just also some examples of projects that we funded with in the interregional cooperation. So as I said, you can do cooperation with your neighboring regions. So for instance, we had funding to create a bridge over the river that marks the border with Belgium. We also had funding for development of nature and natural sites. We also had funding for a project about that we did together between SMEs and health institutions, to help people who are suffering from cancer, to help them to better integrate their work after their illness, if it's possible. So just to show that it can be on very different type of projects that you can cooperate in with your neighboring country or on a more larger interregional scale. I will go further. Just also, but I'm not going in detail about that. But as you know, Europe is also a very urbanized region, so a lot of people live in cities. So there are specific development programs for cities. So you can have specific funding for to develop actually urban projects, urban innovative projects actually. So for that there's specific funding. So that's just to mention that it's important to that there is also specific approach for urban regions and specific funding for urban projects. So some of them are this specific funding that's called European Urban Initiative. So the idea is indeed to find very innovative solutions on urban problems and then share it with other European cities. There's also the URBECT program. It's a program that supports initiatives enabling cities to work together to promote integrated urban development and encourage the exchange of good practices. And that's a little bit the principle of Europe. And then there's also the European Urban Agenda. So the Urban Agenda is coordinated by the European Commission and the member states, and that chairs the Council of the European Union. It is based on the Amsterdam Pact, which was adopted the 30th May of 2016, and it has 3 objectives: to improve regulation to better take into account the needs of cities in European policies, to promote exchange between European authorities, member states, and the European Commission, and to facilitate the access to cities to European funds. So just to know that, yeah, there's specific funding dedicated to urban development and urban issues. You can have look more in detail when we will send you the slide, but it's just interesting to know that this exists. And then I'm almost at the end of the financing part. So if you remember, and when I just go back maybe to the slides, so I explained that there is funding for territories, and there's also funding to promote sectors. So it's the right part of my slides. So there are specific programs actually to fund sectors. I want just to end to go a little bit more in detail about that. So as we mentioned Horizon Europe, for instance. So this is a program to support research and innovation, but you also have, for instance, the LIFE program. It's for the environment issues. You also have, for instance, the Connecting Europe Facility program. So this is a program to support large transport corridors across Europe. You also, for instance, have the Europe Creative program that will support cultural programs and projects, for instance. So as we mentioned, so these programs are managed directly by the European Commission. So regularly they on a regular basis, they do calls for proposals, for project calls, and then you can answer to these calls actually as a local authority or as an SME, and often you have to answer in a partnership with other partners of other European countries. So normally when you answer to a call, you have to cover at least 3 European countries. For instance, my organization can answer to a call with a Spanish city, or with a Polish city, or with a Dutch city. Also companies can answer, but they have to create a partnership with the stakeholders from other countries actually. So that's a little bit the aim of these European programs that are managed by the European Commission. So they do very often they do calls to call for funding, and then you can answer to these calls, and if your project is selected, then you can realize your project and benefit from European funding. But of course it's managed by the European Commission, so it's for the whole European Union. So there are a lot of candidates, or there is a lot of competition for these calls. But yeah, it's important to know that this exists. So the specific funding programs to promote sectors and to promote projects. So it can be on Horizon Europe, it's for innovation. LIFE, it's for environment. Erasmus Plus, as we said, it's to exchange for students and teachers, and also to fund specific education projects, sport and culture projects. Europe Creative, it's for culture, and Connecting Europe Facility, it's for mobility issues, to create actually a kind of network of important transport corridors on the European scale. So yeah, I think it was rather technical. It's a rather complicated part. For instance, yeah, I can understand if you're not working in this, it can be a little bit difficult, but we'll have the slides, and the idea was just that we can give you a little bit the main issues about the European funding. So I think it's important to to retain that for the budget, that it's 70% of the European budget comes from the member states, and there are 30% it's from other incomes. I think it's important that you can retain that. And then, the organization of the budget. So about 33% is for the cohesion policy, 33% is for the common agriculture policy, and 33% is for the new developments and the European priorities. Now at the moment, one of the main objectives from Europe is indeed, as we said, the Green Deal. So to become climate neutral in 2050, and a lot of funding programs are orientated on this. Try to concur on this objective. Actually, that's a little bit, I think, the main elements that you have to try to bear in mind about this financial part. And of course, there's a lot of funding also for territories that is dedicated and that is transferred by Europe specifically to European countries and European regions. And there's a specific framework between Europe and the member states that is set out to use this and to manage this funding in the territories. So we still have some time for questions, also for the part of Juliette, for my part. If something was not clear about funding, feel free to raise your hand or to put a question in the chat. Or if you have questions tomorrow or next week about this part, feel free to send us an email, and we will try to make it clear.
I just want to admit that the most part of students are students from legal sciences.
Okay.
And I think according to the fact that they already had European law,
okay.
First part that Juliette provided, it's more understandable for them. And then, oh my God, a lot of European taxes and something like that. And I think they're a little bit confused about that. But information is so interesting and so large showed. So I am sure that they will rewatch it a little bit later.
Maybe we can put you some text explanation with it, maybe, so that they can see the slides. I'm aware that it's rather complicated if it's new for them. So, but maybe we can try to give you some explanation with the slides to make it more clear.
I think if we'll have this presentation, we will provide them, and I'm sure that some of my colleagues can use this, for example, presentation in their lectures that they provide into the European Union law, or I know that a short course, European constitutional
European law,
European law also exists, like short course of lectures. So I think it will be very useful for them, and I think it was great. And also I want to say thank you to Juliette and to you, Wim. And if there will be some possibility to have some additional lecture, I think it will be a great present, a great grand cadeau.
You're welcome. You're welcome. No, that's perfect. Thanks to you. It was also for Juliette and me, I think, very, very interesting. And now the material is here. We already had a lot of this material, but we try to adapt it a little bit and translate it in English. But if you want to organize a second session, maybe in later, maybe in March or something like that, that can of course be possible. And we will give you the information, the slides with some explanation, especially on the funding part.
Thank you, Vlad.
Thanks to you, and good luck, and Hope that we meet each other later.
I just put something in the chat. The idea of a podcast. It's made by a teacher at the Brussels University about European law and European rules and treaties. So I don't know how many episodes they have. I think they have maybe 4 or 5. So it's just the beginning. But it's super interesting, and it's with a teacher. I think she's well known in all this European law bubble. She's called Chiara Armeni. I'm not sure about how the pronunciation, but it's a good thing to hear about what's going on in Brussels on the law basis. So I hope it's accessible, and I do hope it's gonna fit with what you learned. And like Wim said, really thank you for this opportunity, and with a lot of humility, really thank you, because we know the conditions are not the greatest. So really thank you for your time.
Thank you a lot, and I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, of course.
Stay in touch, and good luck for the rest.
Thank you.
I'm happy to
Bye.
do
Thank
again.
you.
Bye.
Bye.